Welcome to the Adaptable Quick Guide, offering you a whistle-stop tour of some of what this component can deliver for you.
So this is going to be a whistle-stop tour of some of the new features we've added in version 7 of Adaptable. We can only show you a tiny subsection of the many changes we've made, but hopefully it will give you a sense of some of the exciting new functionality on offer. This is using our demo site, it's using the no config demo, it's all available at demo.adaptabletools.com. Before we start, let's just set up our grid. So why don't we use this one as the dark theme, and let's add a couple of buttons which I think we're going to need. So let's add the format column and the calculated column. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is two new concepts called scope and predicate. Scope basically allows you now, when you create a new object in Adaptable, to say where it should be applied. So you can create one object and apply it against multiple columns or all columns of a particular data type. And predicate is a new way of creating very, very fast filter type functions. So let's do that now by creating, say, a conditional style. As we can see, we've got lots of numeric columns here. So let's imagine, like often the case, we want all the positive numbers to be green and all the negative numbers to be red. So rather than needing to do it individually, we can go into conditional style, we can click new, we can say, let's make the forecolor green, where, and now we'll do it for, we said data type, so we'll say number, so all numeric columns. Here's a predicate we talked about earlier, very simple. We say where it's positive, and then there we are. Let's create one more. Let's say we will make the font color to be red, where again you can do the whole row, or you can do certain columns, or in this case we will do every numeric column. And again, you've got a whole load of predicates. There's lots of different types depending on which column you're using. We'll see more of them later when we look at filters. Here's a very simple one, negative. We finish, and you can see it's done that. We can also see that for some of the columns, we've got this kind of slightly annoying multi-decimal places. So for that, we can use a different thing. We can use a format column. The difference between format column and conditional style is format column will create the style irrespective of the text in the column. So again, this time we will just do a couple of columns. So we will say we want invoiced and item cost and order cost and package cost. We want those four all to be the same. You don't need to create a style for them, but we want them to have 3 decimal places, and we want them to align to the right. And you can see that's what it's done. We can then auto size the columns, and those two things have been done for us. Next thing we're going to look at is layouts. Layouts have had a big change in Adaptable version 7. You now must always have one layout, and they will automatically be updated and persisted by Adaptable as anything changes. So for instance, if I move this here, if I decide I want to group by employee, then that's automatically saved, and when I refresh my page, you'll see the changes have been made. And it's very simple to create new layouts. Let's do that now. So we will create a new layout. You can see you can choose which columns you want. In fact, let's make this one a pivot layout. So we're going to enable pivoting. We're going to give it a name, so we'll call it pivot view. Let's have a row group. So for instance, let's say we're going to group by employee. So you can just drag it into here, and you see we group by employee. You can do sorting. So for instance, you can say you're also going to sort by employee, and you're going to sort it in descending order. Now let's add a pivoting column. So for instance, we say we might want to look at the ship via, so we'll pivot by ship via. And you can also add aggregations. You can see if a column is aggregatable, it's got a little checkbox, so we'll say we're going to see we want to aggregate this, let's make it visible then, and we want to aggregate this, and let's make that visible. For every column, as you can see, it says whether it's aggregatable, filtered, part of a row group, etc, etc. So we've got our layout. Let's finish, and there we are. Here's our pivot view layout, and you can see it's created the ship vias, and it's created all the aggregations as we said. So, and then very simple from there to go back into your other view. One nice little feature we've added is the ability to ungroup a column through the column header. So there we are, that's layouts. One of the biggest changes we've made in AdapTable 7 is to calculator columns. We now have a much richer UI editor, and in fact we've created our own parser. So let's create a couple of calculator columns to show you what we mean. So this enters the calculator column, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do something around item count. So we're going to make this one logical. So we're going to say if the item count is less than 5, then write the word small. Otherwise, and now you can write another word, but in fact let's add another bit of logic, so let's use it again, and we're going to say if the item count is less than 10, then write medium, otherwise write big. So we said if it's less than 5 small, otherwise if it's less than 10 medium, otherwise call it big. Then you can give it a name, so we'll call it item desk, and here we can say it's item count desk. It works out, it's a string, it has a load of other characteristics if you want to do it. There we are, that's our expression, which you can write by hand or you can use the UI. And then when we finish, we can add it to our layout. So if we go into our layout editor, there it is. Let's move it up so it can be next to item count itself. Let's make it visible, and then there we are. And obviously it's live. So for instance, where's the item count? Let me put item count next to it. So if I make this one 6, it changes from small to medium. You can obviously do other types of logic as well in the calculated columns. Let's create one more very quickly. You can see we have a whole load of different functions, and we're adding more all the time. So let's use the max function. That's quite useful, say if you want to do some pricing, see which is the biggest of, say, 3 price columns. So here, if we want to see which is the most out of package cost, out of order cost, and out of item cost, that's all it does. It takes them all. As you say, there's lots of functions, lots of many things you can do. You can play around with the dummy data, but we'll create this one simple. We'll call it best cost. I'm not going to give it a description. And again, if we go into our layout editor, you can make it visible, and then let's add it so we can see it. Let's put it to the very beginning. And there we are. It shows you the best one of the 3. So that's calculated columns. We use the same editor, in fact, for another new function we've added, which is called query. A query replaces advanced search and lets you create human writable and readable queries across multiple columns, again using and/or logic. So for instance, if I want to see all the rows where, let's take a good example, let's move ship country in so we can see it, where for instance ship country is equal to France, and where, what should we say, let's say where item count is greater than 10. We can do that, it runs it. In fact, we can give it a name, we'll call it demo query, and then whenever you want you can load it. In fact, the logic is even nicer because you've got and or. So in fact here we can say and item count is greater than 10, or where, I don't know, say order cost is less than 500. You see we can't run it. It works out the query as you're rating it, and only when we close this bracket to make it a legal query does it change to be a run sign, and it's now run the query. If you need more help, you can expand to go back into the query editor we saw earlier with calculator columns. So they're queries. And finally, for now, we've massively improved what you can do at a filter level. You can see that we've added all these new filter types. These are the predicates we saw earlier. And they allow you to create filters very, very quickly. So for instance, if I want to look at any best cost, which is greater, as soon as I type in greater, it changes, greater than 200, it automatically runs. If I want to have a shipfire that contains F, it will automatically run. As I say, there's a huge number depending on whether it's a string or whether it's a number, or in fact, we have a date column here. Let's find a date column. Here we are. Let's move this date column across so we can see it. You have a huge number for dates. So for instance, anything that's in the past, it will do it. If you want to do the old style multiple values, you can still do that. You can still go into here, and we have the old one. We have the ability to do values or filters. But in fact, you can do it here as well. You just have to type it in or click in, and then immediately you get a list. So we can say anywhere which has got Austria, Belgium, Finland, or France. So here we've run any ship country that has those where this is greater than 200. This starts with an F. In fact, you can see them all here. If I click here, you can see exactly what we've got. And like everything, it refreshes. So when I refresh my browser, you can see everything's been saved. There's a lot more in here. In fact, let's show one last thing quickly. Let's show something we've done to percent bars, because that's quite nice. So again, if you look at the item count, we can see it goes from 1 to 15. But instead of using the format, let's say we want to use a percent bar. So now we've added ranges. So let's quickly create a percent bar, and we can say if it's between 0 and 5, don't show green, actually show red. Then add a second range and say between 5 and 10, show orange. So this can be a traffic light system, which is what we're doing. It can be anything you want. And then between 10 and 15, make it green. If you want, you can have you can show the cell value, or you can show a percentage value. You can do toolbars. You can also do a back color, which is what we've got here. And then when you finish, there we are. You now see that like that. Lots more in the in version 7. We've added huge amounts of huge functions, but hopefully you've seen enough to want to find out more. So do please get in touch, and we look forward to telling you. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching the Adaptable Quick Guide. For more information, get in touch at sales@adaptabletools.com, or try Adaptable for yourself at demo.adaptabletools.com.